In this Nick training video, we'll take a look at all the different tools within Snapseed. Now, Snapseed is available as a desktop version as well as a version for mobile, both on an Android device as well as Apple devices, Apple iOS devices. It's really, Snapseed is a boiled down piece of software that gives you a whole bunch of different kinds of capabilities, but it's very simple to use and just very user-friendly. Completely navigable for pretty much anyone. You can see all of the tools on the left-hand side of the interface, but there's a whole bunch of really fantastic tools in here. Now, we've got to be able to edit an image here. So we've got to bring a photograph into Snapseed. And to do that, you can either click on this button itself. So I can click there. That's just going to open up into an open dialog. You can actually go up to File, down to the drop-down menu, Open. Or you could just take a folder, or sorry, an image from a folder or from a desktop and just drag it right in. Whether you're on a Mac or PC, it's going to work pretty much exactly the same way. In fact, there's only a couple little differences between the Mac and the PC versions, and that's within the interface. I think it's like a zoom button within certain sections of the tools might be in a slightly different area. But other than that, whether you launch from a PC or a Mac, the software is going to look and work and react pretty much exactly the same way. Now, on the left-hand side of the interface, you've got your three basic adjustments, including Tune Image, Crop and Straighten, and Details. Now, to access each one of these tools, you literally just click on it. It's very, very simple. One of the really beautiful tools here within Snapseed is the automatic Tune Image adjustment. This is very, very helpful for folks who maybe don't know the direction that they want to take their image in, but just kind of want to automatically fix the image itself. You just click on this button and the image is assessed and it will automatically be adjusted. In this case, we actually darkened the image, added a little contrast, and warmed the photo up a little bit. There are a couple different categories, or presets that you can find within your Tune Image section. You can actually see their visual presets, so you don't even have to click on them if you don't like what they look like in the little thumbnails. Now, another option that you've got is if you click the arrow button underneath your presets, you can go in and create your own presets. So what we might do is add some contrast here. I might actually cool the image down a touch more. Let's increase or decrease the ambiance. Right? We just take our sliders and adjust as we see fit. I'm going to increase the saturation as well. Maybe take a look at the before and after using the compare button in the upper left-hand corner. There's the before. As I let go of the compare button, there's the after. If we like this, I've sort of saturated it quite a bit. In fact, maybe if we took the saturation down just a touch. And then we can save this as a preset. So by clicking on the plus button in these six little visual preset sections here, I can click on it and create it. You can actually replace and delete by clicking on the little icon in the upper right-hand corner of each one of the individual thumbnails there. Now, another option that we've got built into the Tune Image section is control points. Control points, of course, coming from the suite of software that plugs into Photoshop, Lightroom, and Aperture. And what these control points allow you to do is control light and color. In this case, within Snapseed, what you've got is brightness, contrast, and saturation. This little help finder, or sorry, help tool pops up anytime you add a control point, or I should say the first time you add a control point, and will show up anytime unless you click the Don't Show This Help Again option. So if you click on that, it won't show up anymore. But what the control points allow you to do, as I click on the image in the background and that help guide sort of disappears, what the control points allow you to do is control light and color, right? So brightness, contrast, and saturation in individual areas or objects without having to make selections. So let's say these clouds were a little bit too bright. We drop a control point on them, and then I can go and click on my brightness tab and we can darken them down. Right? Maybe we'll get a little bit of detail there. Go into the saturation. I'm going to desaturate the clouds so they look a little bit more natural. But then we can get a little bit more detail out of those clouds. Or if we wanted to darken down the foreground down here, again, just drop a control point. What you can actually see is anything that has that red overlay on it is what's being selected by this particular control point. So you can see exactly what will be affected when we actually go into the brightness adjustment, and in this case darken those tones down, maybe add a little contrast and saturation. I'll add just one more control point to the lower right hand corner of the image, and I'm going to go ahead and just darken those tones down as well. and maybe even add a little bit of contrast. From there, let's take a quick look at our before and after using the compare button. There's the before, there's the after. If we like what we've done, we can click the apply button. If we hate what we've done, we can actually click the cancel button, and that way we can actually cancel out and go back to the home menu with all of our tools without applying the adjustments. In this case, I want to decrease the amount of contrast that we're adding in and maybe decrease the ambiance just a touch. Click apply, and that's going to apply this filter to our preview and bring us back over into the home section or the home interface, where from there we might go into some creative adjustments like your dramatic tools. And what you'll find with all of the different tools here is that they're going to have some form of presets, right? And then different options for creating your own presets, as well as some other capabilities depending upon the tool that we're using. In this case, I just want to add a little bit of drama to the image. I don't want to desaturate, so I'm going to go ahead and double click on my saturation slider. We'll home that slider, which gets it back to its original default setting. We take a quick look with the compare button. There's the before, there's the after, and we've got our nice drama. If I click the apply button then, it will then bring us back over into our home interface. We'll take a quick look. So we started with this image, we've used the selective adjustments, and then worked with our drama setting, and we're now here. So we're starting to fine-tune the photo just a bit, but there are, 6, 7 different creative adjustments that you can make, including this one. This is a tilt shift, which will actually blur your edges by default, and it keeps the center in focus, emulating a tilt shift sort of filter, or tilt shift lens rather, or Scheinflug if you're going to be getting into 4x5 movements. Definitely very cool stuff. And in the upper left-hand corner, you have both a circular tilt shift as well as a linear tilt shift. And then all of the tools that one might need to adjust that tilt shift. You can, of course, click on these different gradients. And what you're seeing specifically here, your center is a center point. So it's going to be totally in focus, or it's not going to be blurred by the tilt shift filter. Then as you make your way out, so to here, there's no blur. And then once you get outside of this first line, there's going to be a transition where you can see it's pretty sharp here, but then it gets blurry, goes out of focus. And then at the end here, this next line, completely out of focus. So that's how you might go about controlling this tilt shift filter. And in fact, I think I've blurred the image just a touch too much, so I'm going to dial that back down, make it a little bit more subtle. And then I'm just going to go ahead and apply. From there, let's finish with a vintage filter, which the vintage tool is going to allow us to create this sort of vintage effect. It's got one custom setting that I must have created previously. If I click back, these are the default presets that are built in. So again, you can start with a preset and then kind of make your way from there. Or you could just move into your different sliders and start from scratch. You've got your 9 different styles. If you click on your styles section, these are different color overlays. And then you have a texture tool, which allows you to apply 4 different main textures. But if you click on the individual textures, you can actually randomize. So let's say I bring my texture strength up to 100%, so you can see that leather texture. And then if I go and click on that, you can see as it randomizes. And you can control the amount of that texture by way of your texture strength. In this case, I want to actually decrease my strength. I want to increase the vignette a little bit. I like the brightness of the image. Let's go ahead and just increase the saturation. And this is a relatively subtle little adjustment, but there's the before, there's the after. We're starting to, again, polish the image. Now, all of these different tools, I'm using several of the different tools here within Snapseed. We wouldn't necessarily have to do that. You could, if you just want a really stylistic effect, wouldn't even have to go into the basic adjustments if you don't want to. You could just go into something like grunge. Or you could go and convert your image from color to black and white with the black and white settings, the black and white tool. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a frame for this image. I like the default frame, but it's encroaching too far into the photo, so I take my size slider to the left, and it's going to bring that. It's basically the size, how far into the middle this edge encroaches. And I don't want it to encroach so far, so I'll bring that back just a bit. Then I click my apply button, and that's applied to this image. Now, if you need to zoom in, you've got your zoom function or zoom button in the upper right-hand corner. That's going to zoom you into 100% by default, but then you've got different zoom percentages in your navigator here in the upper right-hand corner. So we could zoom to 300% or 50 or 25. And the shortcut for the zoom is just spacebar. So if you hit the spacebar on your keyboard, it'll zoom you in or zoom you out. If you want to compare your image to see a before and after, you use the compare button in the upper left-hand corner of the interface. So here's the before, there's the after. If we're done, we can save this image. And to save the photo, you can actually move into the upper right-hand corner of the interface, and you can click your Save As button, so I can save it directly from Snapseed to a computer, to my desktop or to a particular portion of my hard drive as a JPEG or a TIFF file. And you can actually size them as well. So the original size is going to be whatever the original resolution and pixel dimension would be, but then you've got 3 different sizes for your JPEGs. And medium is probably best for web in this case at 1024 pixels there. Now I'm going to click cancel because I want to show you one more option while we're on this image. You can actually click this button in the upper right hand corner. It's a little box with the arrow in it. It's the share button. So we can share to Mail, Facebook, Flickr, and Twitter right now. And it's just very easy. You can click your Mail button, and you can decide how big your image should be. So here you can see the inherent size of my file is very big. It's 5,600 pixels by 3744. But either way, we can resize, we can send the original, click Send Mail, and your mail client's going to launch, and you can send this image in an email. You also have a print button as well, so if you've got a printer set up, and I don't, so as I click on that button, it'll probably get confused, and I'm just going to go ahead and click cancel, but this would open into your print dialog so that you could print the image. Now, let's open up just one more image. How about this one? It's a warm photo. It's very different than what we've got so far. I just dragged another photo from my desktop onto Snapseed or into Snapseed, and so I haven't saved this image. Snapseed knows that, so it's going to say, oh, well, do you want to save this photo? Oh, I don't need to, so I'm just going to say no. Now, our image opens, and again, we just go about our business. We choose the tool that we want to use, and in this case, I could crop the photo. And what's cool about this crop function is that you've got different ratios, so if there's a particular ratio you want to keep your image in, you can keep it as your standard or whatever your inherent ratio was, or you could change it to fit 8 by 10. So if I wanted to print this as an 8 by 10 image, or bigger or smaller or whatever, you can actually change the ratio very easily with that function. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and crop this image because let's say I wanted to print this as an 8 by 10, so I'm going to crop it. But you have a straighten option. You can actually angle the image as well. So if you had maybe an off-kilter horizon that you wanted to fix, you could do that. Rotating left and right as well. So let's click apply. That's going to crop our image. Really handy function. Within your detail section, you have your different presets, but you can actually sharpen, and then you have structure. So sharpening is basically going to bring out the detail along the edges of objects, right? Structure is actually going to help to exaggerate the textures and details, not necessarily affect the edges of objects per se, but bring out textures in between edges. So you'll see the areas like within her shirt right here. If I bring my structure slider up, it's going to increase that texture. And actually in this case, I'm going to use just a little bit of structure here on that photo and click the apply button to apply our sharpening or our detail. From there, I say we go into our center focus. This one could be cool. Center focus allows us to create a vignette around the edge, and both a luminosity-based vignette, so we can go dark or light with the vignette slider itself, but you can also brighten or darken the center. So this is really handy for like relighting an image. If I want to direct your eye towards her face, we can do that with the vignette and center brightness. And then your blur slider will actually blur anything outside of the center. So that's great. Again, if we want to, if I wanted to direct your eye towards her here, I'm going to blur the edge just a touch. I'm going to take my vignette tool to the left and darken down the edge just a little bit, and then maybe brighten the center up just a touch. And what this is going to help to do for us, let's go and make this a little more extreme, is it's going to help to direct the viewer's eye towards her. towards the center or towards the subject of our photo. So that's your center focus as I click the apply button. That brings you back over into the home section of the interface so that we can utilize any of our other tools. Let's use grunge in this case. Now, grunge initially can be really stylistic. It typically is really stylistic, highly aggressive sorts of adjustments here. But you can kind of dial those effects down. In fact, I'm going to go into my textures first. I'm going to maybe apply texture number 3. We'll randomize it a couple times, and I'm going to take my texture strength down to almost nothing, just so there's a little bit of that added texture. Increasing the saturation will actually increase the color that was inherent within the image, as opposed to increasing the color that was kind of being overlaid by way of this filter. And what I want to do here is just find a nice style. So I want something that's warm, but maybe not too warm. And actually, let's decrease the saturation. Play with that just a little bit. And then I'm going to darken down the image because it's a little bit too bright. But now her skin tone looks a little bit odd to me. So let's say we really like this effect. Right? There's the before. But there's the after. Let's say we love this, but maybe there's a section of the image that's not perfect. Well, then we could just go back into the Tune Image section, right? And I'm going to actually double-click on each of these sliders to get them back home, their defaults. And then we can drop control points on these areas. And in this case, her face just has a little bit of too much color, or maybe a slightly wrong color. So if I saturate, it's going to bring out more of that incorrect color. If I actually bring this to the left a little bit, I can desaturate just a touch to make this effect a little bit more subtle. And then I'll drop a control point maybe on the shadow area of her cheek, and we can darken that down a touch. And then I'll drop a control point right here on her shirt, and we can sort of dial all these different aspects in. Whereas before, right, we use the Tune Image section at the very beginning of the workflow, and that's typically a good way to work, right? We can kind of go in and set up the image however we need to. In this case, we did that, but then we need to kind of go back and re-edit the image a bit more. So if we take a quick look, there's the before, there's the after. We've got a little bit of that detail back within her shirt, so I click the apply button. And I say we take this image and convert it to black and white. So we click the black and white. And because we've applied all of these other filters, the center focus, the grunge, we've sort of dialed in the tones here, this is going to make it easier to create the black and white image that we want. Where in here you have your 6 different presets. You can create your own presets. I'm going to start with film because that's a nice starting point. I'm going to darken the image just a touch. I think it's a little more contrast than what we actually need. Let's just look at the color filters as well. And these color filters are actually going to emulate glass color filters. So by clicking through them, and I'm not seeing anyone that I like particularly on this image, but by clicking through them, you'd see what this image would have looked like had it been shot on black and white film with that particular filter. So basically here, let's say we like this, click apply. And if we're done, we're done. We're good to go. We're finished. But you can just keep going into these different tools to sort of build upon the adjustments that you've got. So let's say we like this in black and white, but we want to maybe tone it. Well, now we move into vintage, right? And we use vintage on the first image to create the style of the image that we wanted. In this case, we're using it to tone a black and white photo. Right, so let's say we like style number 5. It gives us this nice sort of split toning effect. Maybe it's a little bit too strong, so I'll dial that back just a touch. You know, if this were brightening the image, and it is, maybe a little too much, we can dial that down and then increase that texture strength if we wanted to bring out the texture that was being applied by way of this particular filter. Now when we're done, we click the apply button. Let's take a quick look at the before and after. So here's the original image. And we did all of that different work to it, converted it to black and white. We've got this nice sort of split-toned, colored black and white image using Snapseed. But that, in a nutshell, is Snapseed, right? It's a very, very simple piece of software to use. You literally click on the tool that you want to use. Let's go ahead into one more image. You literally click on the image that you want to use. Let's say, like this already has a tilt shift sort of feel to it because of the very short depth of field. But let's say we wanted to add in a little bit of a vintage effect, and I would say finish with a frame in this case. So let's add the vintage effect, right? And let's just start with a preset. I'm going to increase my saturation Let's say we love that. Right? Just subtly changing the feel of the photo. And then from there, let's just add an image border. So the frames section is going to allow us to add in a different border. If you click on your type, you can change which border you're working with there. And just to sort of finish, let's not encroach so far into the image. Let's make that edge a little bit more sort of grungy, have a little bit more of an edge to it. And then if you actually, sorry, as I move back into my type button, if you click on the type itself, right, we're here in the type menu, but if I click on the type itself, it randomizes the image border, the edge. So that's great because then we can get the same type, the same style edge, but it's random every single time. So it's slightly different. It feels a little bit more organic, if you will. When we're all done editing, of course, you just save your file out. So I can go up to the Save or Save As well as click on the Save button in the upper right-hand corner of the interface.